welcome to Conversations with Dr. Stephen Greer, and it's brought to you by the World Puja Network, and we'd like to thank the folks at the World Puja Network for hosting us for this interview that we have every couple of weeks, and I'm joined today on the conversation with Linda Willitts, who's been with the Center for the Study of Extraterrestrial Intelligence and the Disclosure Project for many years, and we're going to talk today about some of the experiences we recently had on our expedition to Crestone, Colorado, as well as the type of experiences that extraterrestrial technologies manifest around us, so that people have a sense of just how amazing this whole experience is for people who go out under the stars to do this. So thanks, Linda, for joining us.
Sure. It's a pleasure.
Great. Well, you want to talk a little bit, share some of the impressions you had from the events that happened last month in Colorado with everyone?
Yeah, it was incredible, and one thing I'll start by talking about the bubbles in the compasses, because we've been going to Crestone now. I think this was my 12th or 13th time, and I know the CSETI group had gone for a few years even before I started going. So it's been many, many years we've gone to Crestone, but we started using this one particular site in 2006, and that was the first year that people started finding bubbles appearing in their compasses, the liquid part of their compasses. And, an air bubble can't get into a compass unless there's a leak somehow. There were no leaks. Everybody was getting a bubble in their compass. And that happened in 2006, it happened in 2007, and it happened again here in 2008. And, in fact, even, you can't say it's an elevation thing or anything. We've been all over this valley. We've been at higher elevations. There's never been bubbles until 2006. And, in fact, this particular year, one of the members of our group left his compass in his hotel room, which was less than a mile from our field site, probably even less than half a mile from our field site. And he didn't have any bubbles in his compass until about the third or fourth night. He brought his compass out to the field, and the next morning he had a bubble. And Dr. Greer did a meditation. It was on the fourth night of our field work at Crestone this past June. Actually, this was the 2nd of July. That was our fourth night out in the field. And he did a meditation, and during the meditation, the words he speaks when he does a meditation, he says, are what he's seeing and experiencing. And during this meditation, for the first time, he mentioned the huge aquifer that's beneath this area in Crestone where we were doing our field work. And he mentioned, and he felt that the ETs were in the aquifer, and that was the reason they were communicating to us by putting bubbles in our compasses at this particular site. And during this part of the meditation, when he was talking about the aquifer and the water, this really gentle, light rain started to fall on us. And it was just so timed perfectly with that part of the meditation.
So it was a crystal clear sky.
Yeah, there were no clouds. And yet these light, gentle raindrops were falling on us. And then during the meditation, as we had done for the first time in his meditation in Mount Shasta in 1999, he had invited the ETs and the Celestials to participate with us in the healing of the earth. And that was the first time that this huge triangle appeared over us and moved across the sky so majestically. And that happened 3 times that year in Mount Shasta, when in the middle of each time he did that meditation. Well, he did in the same meditation that he mentioned the aquifer and the raindrops started to fall. We also entered into that communication with this intergalactic center that is the source of this huge triangle. And right after the meditation finished, this triangle went over us in Crestone.
Right, and it was enormous. It was about the size of the triangle in Pegasus, and moved across the sky. In fact, it was so large, a lot of people couldn't quite grasp and see the points of it. It was 3 points of light, and it happened. It came directly overhead and then turned over and went over the Sangre de Cristo Mountains. And this object was out in deep space, and it, of course, when it happened at Mount Shasta a few years ago, and by the way, we're going to be, the public listening are invited to this event at Mount Shasta in each year, and the Crestone, and these are open to the public, and you can see about what we're doing at www.cseti.org, cseti.org. But we were astonished because it was so large that it was seen from Vancouver all the way down to L.A., and the one this time was equally as large, and what we concluded was that we were seeing one side of a massive tetrahedral object way out in space, and it was hundreds to thousands of miles across on each side. It was enormous. But what preceded it is exactly what Linda was talking about. We go into the states that we will do a puja, and we will teach people deep meditation and cosmic awareness. And then we have these meditations out under the stars where we go into this universal cosmic mind together and then remote view where these extraterrestrial visitors are, and then invite them to come for a gathering of peoples for the creation of a time of universal peace on Earth. And that's the purpose of really why we're there. And it's called Ambassadors to the Universe because we're teaching people to become ambassadors from humanity to these visitors who we know are here and are waiting for an appropriate response. So when everyone gets into this synchronous state, in this meditative state, we have these amazing things happen. And Linda mentioned three of them. One was this strange phenomenon with these bubbles being formed inside these hermetically sealed compasses. And a physicist who was there last year said, well, this is like some type of high-energy plasma-like effect. And it happened each time after we had seen that there was an extraterrestrial vehicle that was around us but not quite fully materialized. And we'll get into this in a moment, where we have a lot of electromagnetic anomalies and where people can actually see the shape of a craft, but it's almost like it's a electronic hologram or an electronic energy field as opposed to a solid matter, but it's in the shape of a craft. And then we had, during the meditation, as soon as I saw that of course often it's reported that these ET craft go in and out of this mysterious valley, and also in and out of Mount Shasta and in and out of Joshua Tree, where we're going to be in November. And these craft are seen going in and out of the Earth. And we have actually seen that happen. When we were at Joshua Tree National Park the first time back in '96, we had this massive 200-foot or so diameter flattened disc-shaped object come straight out of the sky and go right into the desert. And we thought it was going to explode, and it just merged into the Earth, and it showed us where they were underneath. And we knew then that, of course, this happened a great deal at Blanca Peak in Colorado. It happens at Mount Shasta. It happens at many of the places we go to make contact. Well, this particular site in Crestone is a sandy site that's out on the Baca, which is the flat valley there in the mysterious valley, the San Luis Valley. And I think that the water aquifer is not very far underneath us, because in many places near there, the aquifer, which is, I think, the third largest aquifer in North America, and of course an aquifer is an underwater body of water, comes right up to the surface. It actually bubbles up to the surface. And we know that these ET craft have been seen going into the Earth and the mountains there, and also some of the locals call it cheap fireworks, where there'll be these sort of bright white objects that will shoot straight up out of the Earth, coming like a falling star, but coming up from the Earth going into the sky, and we've seen this dozens of times. So I think our site that we were guided to is a site that's very close to where there are ET vehicles, extraterrestrial vehicles, underneath the Earth and in the aquifer and in the opened, sort of carved out areas of the Earth underneath us, because we've had all these strange phenomena happen. And just as I was describing seeing this craft that was under us in the aquifer, out of a crystal clear sky, there were no clouds above us or around us at all. This most gentle, almost celestial rain started falling but it was physical rain. It was water droplets falling on everyone in the circle during this really beautiful point in the meditation. So it's almost like an interplay between cosmic awareness, the consciousness of the earth, and the consciousness of these cosmic beings and extraterrestrial beings that are there. And it's a really beautiful sort of coming together of energies that are quite remarkable and extremely Vedic, if you understand the Vedas and the understanding of how the earth is conscious and how everything is consciousness and can interface with your awareness when you're in that state of higher cosmic mind. And so those are the things that happen. And then right afterwards, of course, as Linda said, we had this massive triangular ship that appeared overhead that everyone saw. It was astonishing, and floated right over us, headed kind of towards the north and northeast. And then as it vanished, there were multiple other ET craft that appeared in that same area of the sky. So it was really quite remarkable. The sort of, I think there were 4 other ones that we're seeing, including this sort of blue-white, cobalt-colored ship that flies in often that has a very senior extraterrestrial being that I have called Kindness, who I had an introduction to the night after the night that Sherry Adamak, our assistant, passed away in 1998, in January of 1998. And this craft, by the way, we saw every single night in Crestone this year, and some nights more than once. And it's quite remarkable because it has a bluish-white tint to it. Often it'll come in from space and come into the atmosphere and shine a light on us. In fact, last year when we were at this same site in Colorado, we actually had a brilliant beam of light come from that ship and shone right on the group as we were sitting out there very, very late out under the stars. So, we just have these amazing experiences, and most people who hear these things, it sounds like something out of a science fiction movie, except when you come on these expeditions and you realize that this kind of phenomenon, these expressions of extraterrestrial awareness and their amazing ways that they interact with us, is simply not like a Hollywood movie. It's so much more beautiful and so much more interesting than what you see even in special effects from George Lucas or something. And that's what we're doing, and it's wonderful because then people understand that these really very conscious civilizations that are interstellar and can travel between star systems are interacting with us in ways that are rather mysterious to people who don't understand it. But once you understand the interplay between matter and space and time and cosmic awareness, it all makes perfect sense.
And remember, for the first few nights we were out in the field, too, there was this triangle motif going on. And people were, there was an anomalous set of triangular lights that appeared in the east, kind of low on the mountain. And people were taking pictures of orbs and things and pointing the cameras directly up into the sky, and there would be a triangular formation of orbs on the pictures. And we were commenting on how many triangles we were seeing.
That's right. In fact, I got several of these on my camera, digital new camera I got. It was just an 8.1 megapixel camera, but it got this perfect equilateral triangle, which is the CSETI logo, which you can see if you go to cseti.org. You'll see the logo. And that shape kept appearing all week and then appeared with this massive triangle that was materialized. That was 3 points of light, very distinctly seen, moving across the sky. And it wasn't like a small thing. This is a very large area of the sky that was moving. As if 3 bright stars were lit up. And, of course, they were just outlining the dimension of one side of this massive interplanetary center is what I believe it is, because it's too large to be in our atmosphere, and it certainly is in a group of satellites that are moving together like that. And plus it has turned and signaled to us before.
Right.
And so we know it's our visitors, and we know that it happens when the group is in a great a deep level of synchronicity and resonance in a higher state of awareness. And So these experiences were wonderful. The other thing that happened that's very interesting about this is that from that site, we had people who saw a craft appear. It was behind me, this particular event, appear in the Great Dipper, and it moved from left to right and then made a right-hand turn straight down, and then another right-hand turn straight to the right again, and then another right-hand turn straight down, and then moved in an arc, went up over the Sangre de Cristo Mountains. And it originated, however, right there in the Big Dipper, where we had this amazing event happen on one of the, I guess it was
the next night.
The following night, we were up on Blanca Peak, and we had seen this beautiful golden ship appear out over the great sand dunes there. And we were there and, of course, had been doing our protocol for making contact using lasers and consciousness and remote viewing. And we had done this puja right at sunset just before this happened. And we were up on about 9,000 feet up on Blanca Peak, overlooking the valley and the great sand dunes, and did this beautiful puja. And then I taught everyone meditation again, and we were then in our circle. And what happened was this craft, when it moved over, it came in from the area of the sand dunes and over the Sangre de Cristos to our northeast, and then moved into a cloud. And we thought it had vanished, but then about a few minutes later, it reemerged, the same ship, and came back out, and then moved over towards the Big Dipper. Then the sky completely cleared off so that there was no clouds at all in the sky, and the Big Dipper was there, sort of in the northwest, I guess, at that point. And we started noticing, after a member of our team in his meditation asked the ETs to do something with rearranging the formation of stars in the Big Dipper. And he just sort of had a whimsical thought like that, but he hadn't shared it with the whole group. He just had it privately. And all of a sudden, one star, and at times two stars, in the Big Dipper would be turned off and on as if they were spotlights. Now, I had a binocular that was a night scope that magnifies starlight 32,000 times. And it was clear that there was no cloud and nothing up there that could be seen, and yet very selectively, just exactly from where our group was sitting, there would be one and sometimes two of the stars, of the 7 stars in the Big Dipper, that would go on and off, and then we would signal to it with our laser, and they would signal with us. And this went on for 15 or 20 minutes or something.
Right.
And we actually filmed this. And what's amazing about it is that there is absolutely no, even though we've never had an experience like that one, it was another way of them saying, we're with you, we see you, we're going to interact with you. And then we had more experiences that ensued that night, because there's a contact site that we go to up on Blanca Peak that we've had amazing contact since 1997. And that was the night that we were going to go up to this really beautiful and very sacred site up on Blanca Peak, which in the Native American tradition is the sacred mountain of the East for the Western tribes of Native Americans. And so we went up there, but this was, before we went to the contact site, we had this whole series of amazing sightings and signaling. And it happened that the signaling was happening in a certain sequence that we've been trying to decode. And it's very reminiscent of what happened last fall up in November, a few months ago, in November of 2007, when we were at the Joshua Tree National Park. And by the way, we're going to be taking a group up there in November this year also, and we're going to also have a whole group here in Charlottesville in the Blue Ridge Mountains at our farm in October, in the last day of September and the first week of October, if people want to join us here. And it's going to be, all that information, by the way, is at cseti.org. But what was fascinating about the sequence was that there was some numeric mathematical sequence to it that we're still trying to analyze, frankly. But when a whole bunch of people got back, it was about an hour drive to get back to our condos and hotel in Crestone from where we were up on Blanca Peak. And, of course, we're, out there till 2 in the morning, so it was very late. Several people came in, and their clocks had restarted as if there had been a power failure, but instead of the clocks going back to 12:00 a.m., which is what most clocks do, in fact, my clock, when I checked into my condo, had that on it because there had been a power interruption. They were all saying 3:03. And, again, we were having this, a 3 being, of course, the point of 3 points of a triangle. There was this motif, this numerological motif. And it was quite anomalous because if you were just to interrupt the power supply to these clocks, they all just start when the power comes back on to 12 o'clock a.m. and are flashing. Instead, they were flashing 3:03. And there was this motif going on about these numbers. One clock, there was only one that did 6:06, which is a multiple of 3:03, which is even more bizarre because nothing ever comes back 6:06. So this whole thing, people go, well, what does all this mean? And I said, it's, you're dealing with extremely high intelligence and very enlightened civilizations that interact with us on many levels. Some of it's abstract, some of it's just in consciousness, some of it has some encoded messages, and then others are very explicit messages. And but all of this, of course, we're just hitting the highlights because every single night that we were out under the stars in Crestone, Colorado last month, we had these sorts of amazing events take place. And I know that it was a life-changing experience for many people because it's so much deeper and more profound than most people realize when they're first learning about this subject.
Because to me, here we are, just one person or a small group of people here on Earth, and way out there in deep space, ETs are communicating with us. They're tuning in to little old us on Earth, and they're showing their love and their caring for us by communicating with us personally. It's just incredible, and people get that when they're out in the field.
And they're doing it because they know that everyone who has been called to come there are people who should become ambassadors to these visitors in their local area, because the United States government and other governments around the world made the very big mistake back in the 40s and 50s of classifying all of this, and which robbed the State Department and our diplomats and the United Nations of the opportunity to be doing what we're doing. And so the extraterrestrial civilizations that are here and that are watching our evolution on this planet and are waiting for us to become peaceful and enlightened and make contact with them, they are very eager to have people do this, what we call close encounters of the fifth kind, which is when humans deliberately go out to make open contact, free of fear, free of prejudice, free of all the stories that you hear about the aliens and all this scary stuff, which is all disinformation designed to scare people. And what you find is that if you actually go out there and with a free mind and free of prejudice make contact, that they do respond in ways that are really very deep and profound, but also very evident, as in craft that fly in, craft that materialize nearby or semi-materialize on the site, beings. We actually have had extraterrestrial beings that have materialized briefly and then dematerialized. We've had people touched by beings who are there and then vanish. And no one's scared by this because they're prepared before they come, because there's a training kit that everyone gets before they come, so that they understand that there's going to be a lot of unusual experiences, because we're not dealing with 21st century human technology. We're dealing with civilizations that can transfer through space and time across thousands of light years of space, if not millions of light years of space. And I'm convinced that some of these civilizations that we're interacting with are in a state of permanent cosmic and God consciousness, and their technologies are emerging from that level of conscious awareness, which is sort of showing our future on Earth, where in the future we're going to have a planet where everyone on the planet is in a state of enlightenment, and the technologies we're using are ones that are coming from an understanding of the cosmology, where energy and matter and consciousness interface, and where we're living in a totally different and enlightened way than how we are now. And so in a sense, they're sort of showing us a glimmer or a glimpse, if you will, into the human future that isn't that far away in terms of cosmic time, but maybe a few thousand or a few 100,000 years away in terms of actual Earth time. And I think that that's why this is so exciting, because we're not only seeing the way these civilizations exist right now throughout the cosmos, but we're getting glimpses into the kinds of sciences and technologies and sciences that are interfacing with conscious awareness that will be the human future in the not-too-distant future, looking down the next few hundred years and few thousand years.
One of the things about the contact site that you've mentioned is that for everyone that goes up there, it's an initiation into service, and it's very profound, and it's just an amazing experience to be up there. I mean, you really feel the sacredness, and you feel that it has been a special site of sacredness and contact for thousands of years.
Yes, and I'm sure it has been. I'm sure the Native American peoples, and there are traditions in that area of the Native peoples having contact with the people from the stars or the star people. And I think that it has been a site where this has happened. And we do know that I have a friend who's a fellow medical doctor who had a private plane he was flying near Blanca Peak back, I think, in the 70s. And there was a massive ET spacecraft that was about 300 feet in diameter that materialized in broad daylight right by the peak and came out by his plane. And his plane had all these electromagnetic anomalies on his gyroscope and compass and everything, just like we were talking about. We often will have these very profound electromagnetic anomalies and effects on our equipment when we're having contact. And then the craft, after it had made contact with him, he saw it go over towards Blanca Peak, and instead of he thought it was going to crash, just like we thought that big ship that we saw in Joshua Tree was going to crash. He thought it was going to actually hit the side of the mountain and crash, but instead, even with the sun shining on the metallic skin of the craft, and it was huge, I mean, it was the size of a football field in diameter, it just went blip straight into the mountain, up in the area where we go and have our contact site. And it's interesting because I've heard this from many pilots and military people who are in the Disclosure Project. They often don't talk about it because they're afraid that they'll be ridiculed if they tell what really happened. Because the way that the ET technologies work is so far beyond anything Steven Spielberg has in the movies and stuff. And interestingly, this is the real ET craft are like this. And so when this doctor, this physician friend of mine told me this story, I said, well, yeah, because you have to understand the ET technologies are such that they can change the actual spin of each subatomic particle in their spacecraft so that they can either completely dematerialize or appear to be materialized but be a little bit out of tilt with the linear space-time matter of Earth so that they can go straight through solid objects. Because a lot of people don't realize that if you look at your body and how big your body is, say I'm 6'4" and weigh 225 pounds, all of my mass, if I were to make it into one solid ball of solid matter, and just all the protons and neutrons, that would fit on the tip of a pen. That's how much it would actually occupy. The rest of it is this space matrix of energy. And so solid matter, we say solid matter, even the densest solid matter that we have on Earth is mostly, quote, empty space. But what is empty space? Empty space actually has within it this matrix of zero-point energy, of subtle energies, of astral energies, of consciousness, everything else. And so solid matter can be affected electronically to go through other solid matter by having the one slightly out of spin with the other, and there won't be a single atom touch each other. And that's what he saw, and we've seen this. We've seen this as, of course, we just told you the story about what happened at this amazing experience at Joshua Tree, where we're going for our Palm Springs and Joshua Tree training in November, which everyone's invited to. It's a very exciting event. We had this craft that came and went straight into the Earth, and we thought, of course, there was going to be this massive explosion because it was so brilliant it lit up the entire desert floor in the middle of the national park. But instead, it just merged into the Earth.
Didn't even make a sound.
It actually showed us the contact site that we were to use because it showed us where they went in and out of the Earth in that area of Joshua Tree National Park. So that's where we go every year now. And it's really an amazing thing. So when you've entertained these ideas, you kind of have to step out of 20th and early 21st century understanding of physics into a physics that is known in the classified world. It's certainly known at Lockheed Skunk Works and places like that. But it's not taught at MIT or Yale or Harvard or Caltech or anywhere else. So I think that what's important is that part of it is also a scientific educational program to understand what the potential is, and therefore all the unusual ways that extraterrestrials can interface with our environment, with ourselves, with our awareness that aren't in our worldview, that are totally paradigm busting, because we're dealing with civilizations that are able to travel at multiples of the speed of light, who are able to have thought interface with the machine so that the machine does what the thinking is telling it to do. It's what I call consciousness-assisted technologies. Really super advanced sciences. And that's what we're dealing with. And it actually is showing the human future. A great deal of what I'm talking about is actually already known within the classified projects that I've been exposed to and have known people who've worked in. But unfortunately, we're sort of locked in the 1800s with the sciences and technologies we're using today on Earth. But on these CSETI experiences, the CSETI experience is one where people are really being introduced into the reality of how space, matter, time, consciousness all come together and interface. And that's why we have all these experiences that when you first hear them, they sound just crazy. Like, why would an ET being civilization obscure, one star in the Great Dipper, in the Big Dipper, over and over again in some kind of sequence where multiple different stars were being turned on and off in a crystal clear sky in Colorado? Well, there is a message there, and it's part of the message is, hey, we can do this, and then it's for us to figure out what the meaning is. So it's a wonderful experience, and every single time we go out on these expeditions, it's different. In the end of September and early October, we're going to be here out in the Blue Ridge Mountains where there's so many sightings and events that happen. In fact, we've had craft right over our house here that have been seen by our neighbors. And that's you are all who are listening to this interview are welcome to come to this. And we're going to be out every single night under the stars and out under the sky. But when we were here in 2006 in the fall, I don't know if you remember, Linda, we had this amazing experience, and actually I think this image is up on the CSETI website at cseti.org, where we were sitting in a circle out on our meadow just off from the house here and overlooking the Blue Ridge and Shenandoah National Park, and a beautiful setting out here. And suddenly I saw right overhead, I felt first and then saw this craft that was way up in space. And I was pointing to it, and I pointed to it and then pointed to this energy field and object that came out of the ship that came straight into the center of the circle. And I actually pointed to it with my finger. Well, there was someone who was filming in super night shot, infrared. And as they were shooting this image, they didn't know they had captured the actual object that I was trying to point out to people that was so fast and so subtle that most people didn't sense it at all. But when he went back and looked at the film footage, there was this very unusual probe that looks, and there was a sort of a Fibonacci sequence to the way that it was shaped. It had sort of a curved area. It was like a rod that had a curved area that was the receiver, and a pointed area opposite, further down, that was the transmitter, and then another curved area. And it was moving, and it came straight out of the sky, and it followed my finger, because I actually saw it and sensed it with my consciousness. And it went right into the center of the circle and became an object standing there that was both used for interfacing with our consciousness and thoughts and meditation between our group and these extraterrestrial visitors. And then subsequently, there were multiple other of these objects that were filmed all around us in the meadow, right where we were. And again, they showed up on this super night shot, and they're really quite an interesting set of images and photographs to see. And so that's another thing that's very unusual, is that a lot of people, don't realize that they don't have to come in like an F-16 jet fighter. This is the kind of much more nuanced and subtle ways that the actual ET civilizations can interface with a group and do interface with us. And we have seen this sort of thing not just at once, but many, many times as we are out under the stars together.
And the animals around us, the wild animals, can sense these things, because quite often we'll hear the coyotes will start up when something really profound is happening. And I know that when there was a craft over in the corner of the field when we were in Charlottesville in 2006, and it was in the area where the fellow was filming and got these light sequences that would happen. The deer started making their noise that they make when they're afraid.
Right, that's
the
right.
Deer in the forest.
That's right, because they picked up on this strange electromagnetic energy. And it's interesting because animals, have different sensory. They can see things we don't see. They can hear things we don't hear. And they can sense things that many humans don't, because we live in such artificial environments now that most people are not in touch with their, higher sensory capacities, even physical capacities. But the animals are, because they're living in nature. And it's really interesting to see how that will happen with various animals when contact is about to happen or in the process of happening.
Or during meditation in Crestone, there's these birds called Nighthawks that fly around eating mosquitoes, which is a good thing. And during our meditation, quite often we'll have Nighthawks circling us. You can hear, because they make a certain noise you can hear, and they're drawn in just by the consciousness that we're creating.
Yep. Yes.
And another thing that just delights me every time is how the ETs interact with nature, not only with our electronic equipment, which they're always doing strange things and signaling us with, but nature. They use nature. The raindrops happened twice in Crestone this past time we were there, and they happened the night that you did the meditation about the aquifer, and then they also came down when we were up at the contact site. And so that, and there were no clouds at that time. But the ETs also create clouds. Like as we walked up to the contact site, there was that military jet that started descending. That we were under surveillance, and they know the contact site is a special spot. So the ETs created a cloud over us that made an opaque shield that the plane couldn't see through.
That's right, and it came in exactly as we were moving up there. And also, when we were up at this site called Sand Flats up on Mount Shasta last year, we had done a puja overlooking this whole area with the volcano of Mount Shasta in the background, and we were sitting in circle, and it was crystal clear, and it was a beautiful night, and we started having this really purifying, gentle rain fall on us.
Right.
And we all sensed that it was, of course, this is in late August in Mount Shasta, and but it was part of this interplay between consciousness and our awareness and cosmic awareness and the extraterrestrial presence and the Earth consciousness. Because one of the things that people have to factor into this is that the Earth is awake. I mean, Gaia is a conscious, living, awake being, and is a female. And when I had this experience back in 1990, when I first started this project, and I had this amazing experience where I went out into space and looked back towards the Earth, I actually met Earth as a conscious being, that she is, and every planet is actually not just a ball of rock, but is actually a conscious entity, and that the Earth is a very pure place of love, and beauty, and is very definitely female. And it was interesting because once I realized that, then it completely makes sense that when you get out of your ego consciousness and into this expanded state of enlightened cosmic awareness, and you're doing this kind of work for the healing of the planet and the bringing out of these new technologies that would give us free and clean energy for the planet, and when you're working for peace, that nature, meaning the Earth, can support what you're doing in ways that are really mysterious, but also sometimes very demonstrable, very much right there in your face. And we have had this happen over and over again. For example, we'll be, in England or someplace where it's completely raining and cloudy, and we'll sit in our group and make a meditative circle, and a perfect ring of crystal clear sky opens up above us and stays there the whole time we're out until we break the circle, say goodnight, and a little blessing, and then the clouds close back in. And you can't make this stuff up. And this is not, if it happened once, well, it's a coincidence, but it's happened dozens and dozens of times. And, people are always so amazed by it. And I say, well, it's because we're doing this, but we're doing this from a place of the greater cosmic consciousness as ambassadors from Earth to these visitors. But we're also inviting the Earth energy, the spirit and consciousness of Earth herself, to participate, and she does. And that's really beautiful. And this is where, the Native American teachings about nature and the Earth are very accurate about the fact that it is all conscious and interactive. It isn't just a lump of rock and stuff floating in the space.
And you really get a feeling for the meaning and the intention behind what you're experiencing. For example, the rain that fell on us in Mount Shasta at Sand Flat after the puja, I really had a sense that was a purification.
Yes.
And the gentle rain that fell on us during the meditation about the aquifer, I really had a sense that it was participating with the meditation by illustrating, the water from the aquifer.
Because it happened exactly as I was talking about.
Totally.
It was so strange. Everybody almost gasped because I was just at the point, and we were in this deep cosmic meditation, and then I started talking about that the aquifer and the water beneath us, where we were sitting right on top of it on this site, and that there were extraterrestrial craft that had gone in and out of the Earth and were in the aquifer. And as if to say, yes, you're right, out of a crystal clear, starry desert night, we all started having this gentle rainfall on our foreheads. It's like, you really can't make this up, but there were 40 people who will bear witness to what we just said.
Right.
So it's just an amazing series of experiences that happen. And it happens every night, all night. It never stops.
Yeah.
It's like, if you had one thing like this happen a year, you'd be sort of stunned, but this is like all the time. And the reason it is because I'm convinced that the higher state of consciousness we're entering and the work we're doing for the healing of the Earth is so supported by universal consciousness, by the Earth herself, and by these visitors, because these visitors are here to help and understand us, but we're the children of Earth that have to be the ones who really take the lead, because we are of the Earth and from the Earth. And so the other part of it is that they're very happy that there are some humans who are willing to reach out and make contact with them rather than just make up scary stories about them or start shooting at them with electromagnetic weapon systems like our classified military programs are, or just simply deny their existence, which all the kind of pinheads and bony-headed folks in the mainstream media will say, well, this can't be true, because if it were true, I would know about it because I know everything. I mean, the whole attitude of the arrogant media. So I think that, what you find is that these visitors are really eager, and that's why when people then leave these training expeditions, where they are then they basically really are made to be ambassadors from humanity to these visitors. They go back to Malaysia or to Australia or to England or to Norway or to Canada or someplace in the United States, and they start doing this, and they start having all these contact experiences, because we literally introduce the entire team, but each person individually, to these extraterrestrial visitors and make them become empowered to be ambassadors from their local area. And the reason this is so important is it's almost a default position, because it's important that it be a citizens diplomacy effort anyway, because it's not bureaucratic. But at the same time, I think the ETs would have been happy to have worked with humanity as a whole if there had been a single conscious government on the planet that responded in a rational way. And, of course, this was the tragedy of 1954, when President Eisenhower actually did have a landing and a meeting with these extraterrestrial peoples and their representatives at Muroc in California. And I actually have a document that was sent to me from a European Ministry of Defense describing this event and talking very specifically about the fact that Eisenhower really wanted to disclose and discuss this with the world, but that the military-industrial complex, as he later called it, and particularly the industrial and financial component of it, didn't want him to do it, because by 1954 we had figured out the energy propulsion and energy generation systems that were behind these UFO objects and these ET craft. And, they knew that if this was announced, that we were being visited by civilizations capable of interstellar travel, that everyone would know that it wasn't using ExxonMobil oil or BP oil or coal steamers or all this other primitive, earth-killing, poisonous crap, no offense. I mean, no offense by saying so, but that's destroying the Earth today. So, the problem was, of course, that great opportunity was lost. And that's why we now have to say, okay, since the governments of the world are so dysfunctional right now and aren't dealing with this appropriately, and since the United Nations has not been allowed to deal with this, because when it's tried in the past, those efforts get shut down by some of the powerful interests that are in this group trying to keep this secret, that we, the people, have to be citizen diplomats, citizen ambassadors to these visitors. And that's what we're training people to do, and we think it's very important that we do that, so that the face of humanity being shown to the universe is something a little more enlightened than just the denial and the fear-mongering and the militarism that passes for how we've really dealt with it on a classified basis. And that's why everyone has to take this seriously in terms of saying, gee, why can't I be an ambassador to these visitors? And to which I say you can be. And that's why if you go to disclosureproject.org, there's a new two-set meditation teaching plan that's been put in there that teaches you the meditation, and then another one that teaches you the vectoring protocols for making contact. And all the information is up there, so that even if you don't have time to come to one of these events, you can go to disclosureproject.org and order this material, which is very inexpensive. And you can learn how to do this so that you can become an ambassador in your area. It's interesting. We've had people who, before they came on these expeditions, had gotten these materials and done it in their local area and had amazing sightings and contact with them and just a small 3 or 4 friends or family members. So these visitors are watching this. I mean, there are only 6.5 billion people on the planet, and there are only a handful of those people who are aware of this subject to the point where they will take it upon themselves to make contact. And I think that if you understand Rupert Sheldrake's morphogenic fields, where it's sort of like the 100th monkey effect, where a critical number of people begin to do something, it then causes a shift in consciousness socially and in society and in consciousness all around the world, and in fact perhaps throughout the universe. And that's why it's so important that people come together to do this, understanding the principles that all of this is most effective when it's coming from the experience of cosmic consciousness and from that deep state of oneness of mind. Engage in these contact protocols because it has such a profound effect, and also engage in the meditations and prayers for the healing of the earth and the creation of universal peace with Earth and these other sister planets working together in a whole new era of universal peace. And that's the time that we have entered. And the only way it's going to actually come to pass and be fulfilled is for more and more people to not just know about it, but to begin to practice it, to put it into action. And then it creates this morphogenic field effect where it begins to change the whole consciousness. And so, in fact, I can tell you that over the last year or two, there is a G7 country whose Ministry of Defense and their head of state has been communicating with us about setting up a Eisenhower-type, Muroc-type landing event to make open contact working with our group in this country so that it could then be documented and then announced very quickly within a matter of a few days to the world. So this is something we are actively pursuing with a major G7 country. And I think that what people need to understand is that the reason that it's reached that level of awareness within the various nations of the world is because our little humble effort, which is an unfunded, nonprofit effort, has had an effect not only in creating, sowing the seeds in a very fertile ground of consciousness for this, but that enough of us have been doing this for long enough that it really is creating the morphogenic field that's now affecting world powers. And that's why we think it's so important for people to hear these stories and think, well, why can't I do that? I'm living in Minneapolis or I'm living in Hawaii or wherever I am. Why can't I go out and do this? And to which I'd say, yes, you can and you should, because by doing so, you're opening up and potentiating this whole shift into a time of universal peace and a cosmic culture being established on Earth.
And this consciousness is so powerful that it's drawing in the help of spirits very, very often. Every time we go out into the field, we're usually in a semi-wilderness area. We sense the presence of Native American spirits. We sense the presence of our deceased relatives. We sense celestials and avatars, as well as ETs. I mean, we're drawing universally and affecting everybody, and we're drawing on the help of the whole universe. It's just incredible.
Yeah, the protocol is really to invite all of these beings to participate. So it's going from the unbounded through the whole cosmology of the celestial and the astral and the physical extraterrestrial for this shift to happen. Because there's no separation. You know, everyone thinks of these things as other dimensions. Well, it's really not a good word because it makes it sound like it's so far away. Nothing's far away. If you understand the nature of the conscious mind, the awake mind is omnipresent. And as Erwin Schrödinger said, the father of modern quantum mechanics, he said the total number of minds in the universe is one, and that is, it's a singularity. So there's this single light of consciousness that is shining through the windows of each of our souls, and that if you go to that single light of awareness and operate from there, then it begins to have an effect on every aspect, if you want to call it dimension, of the cosmology, whether it be the celestial, the astral, the physical earth, the extraterrestrial. It has this enormous effect, and that's why it does then recruit. And we actively invite the participation of beings that are able to understand this and do understand it. So it's, to me, very exciting. And I think that what people will experience as they give themselves to this and learn about it is that it's such a beautiful opening of even though the world around us seems to be sort of falling apart on one level, but on another level, there's this coming together in spirit, and there's a coming together in this understanding of the good future that awaits us. And it's not just in consciousness, but it emerges first from there. It's also going to come through and manifest all the way through into the physical sciences, because the way we're living on Earth today is that we're killing the Earth to live on it, which is a very destructive and divisive. The state of unity consciousness and the state of cosmic consciousness allows for the discovery of technologies that allow us to understand the cosmos in a way that we can derive energy and sustenance and what have you from a deeper source of understanding physically as well as spiritually, and that this deeper understanding leads to the understanding of this quantum vacuum space energy, or this anti-gravity type energy, and other types of advanced energy systems that draw energy from the infinite sea of the ocean of energy all around us, instead of burning coal or burning oil or splitting the atom and causing all this life-killing radiation to be created. That all of those means are indicative of the state of consciousness that created them. And so the solution, even for the physical sciences and the technologies that we're facing, is understanding a state of consciousness that has a corollary in the world of technology and in the world of science. It's a very, very deep understanding, and that's really what we want to share with the public.
It's life-changing. Obviously it was for me. I was hooked with my first training in 1996, and it's really exciting to see every subsequent training I've been to see the people there whose lives are changed by these experiences.
Right. No, and it's wonderful, and so many people will say that at the end of these expeditions, and I hope that people will look at the possibility of doing this. Again, we're having an expedition here in Charlottesville, Virginia, in the Blue Ridge Mountains, on our farm here in late September and early October, and again we'll be up in Palm Springs, where we go up to Joshua Tree National Park in the evenings to this really amazing site. And we'll be doing that, of course, in November. And all that information is at cseti.org, cseti.org on the Internet. And, you're invited to participate. And also, if you do learn these protocols, if you get the training materials that are there, you can begin to practice them on your own, even before coming to one of these, and then share with us, if you would, the kinds of experiences you had. We've had people who've done this who have lived all over the world who then contact us and talk about the amazing contact and sightings and experiences they've had using these protocols. And it's a growing body of knowledge, and we hope this fall to come out with a new book that will be describing the CSETI experience over the last 15 years or so, because there's so much that's happened, and there's so many amazing experiences like these few that we've just shared over the last hour that just happened last month in Crestone, Colorado. But it's almost 18 years of that kind of experience, because we formed the CSETI effort in 1990, 18 years ago, in fact, this month in August. And so what we're seeing is that as more and more people understand this and begin to practice it, it's not only opening up the potential for universal peace in our own local areas, but it's potentiating this disclosure of information amongst the world's governments, and now amongst a very significant G7 country, a serious dialogue with their top leaders about having a CSETI CE5 type contact event happen that would involve their head of state and their Ministry of Defense and their Foreign Service and Diplomatic Corps and their scientific community and all of that. So it's very, very exciting, and it's a whole new era that is opening up. Well, I think we've about expended our hour. I'd like to thank you, Linda, for joining me today at the World Fusion Network, and look forward to seeing you soon at Mount Shasta. Of course,
right.
we'll be up there in a couple of weeks, I guess, or so. And I hope all of you will find a way to join us somewhere under the stars. It's such a wonderful experience, and I'd like to thank you for listening to Conversations with Dr. Stephen Greer, and it's been brought to you by the World Puja Network. And I'd like to thank the folks at the World Puja Network for hosting us, and I look forward to speaking to all of you again very soon. Thank you, Linda.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.